Hello, friends. Welcome this evening to um, another episode of Buddhist Insights on Winter Retreat. So, we're doing a little workshop on the miracle of mindfulness. This is the name of the workshop. And today is the second um, episode. But actually, in reality, it's an ongoing episode, it's an ongoing series here at Buddhist Insights. Hopefully, at least we have that aspiration of constantly cultivating mindfulness in every moment. Speaking of which, I will first say hello to all our friends who have joined us this evening. Hello to Cows, our friend, and Ron, welcome. And Mary, our neighbor, good to see you. And Adine, welcome. Adine is watching from Portland, Oregon, where the sun's out and melting the ice. Lucky you. We're still submerged with actually a lot of beautiful snow. Today there were um, 16 deer in our backyard. All of a sudden, I looked out and I thought it was the usual 4 or 5 that come. It's like a little family. And I was like, oh, look at how cute they're playing in the snow. And then I'm like, oh wow, they brought more friends. Wait, more friends, more friends. So the word is spreading out, and I noticed that a lot of our um, trees have been trimmed. I think that's why the word spread amongst the deer. They're like, hey, they've got a bunch of trees that are tasty. So, also welcome to Chitta Pala, and welcome to everyone else who's watching. And we'll start the evening or morning or middle of the night, because I think that Cow's our friend is actually in Europe. So it's the middle of the night. So we'll start with half an hour of meditation or so, and then we'll be speaking a little bit of Dhamma. So you can get in a comfortable position if you're not in a comfortable position already. Make sure your back is upright. And when you're ready, take a few deep breaths. And relax the entire body from the top of the head to the tip of the toes. Relaxing any point of tension in the body. Sending metta to any pain that we might feel. Whether it's physical or mental. And we can spend some time Just doing nothing. Just staying here without any goal, nothing to do, nothing to accomplish, nothing to think about, nothing to obsess about. Just enjoying being. We can let any thought, any craving, any aversion pass right through us like water through a cloth. We don't need to hold on to any of it. Don't have to do anything. And as we dwell like this peacefully, the body becomes more and more relaxed. And as the body becomes more and more relaxed, the body becomes more and more peaceful, more and more tranquil. And we can start actively paying attention to this element of tranquility in the body, watching it closely, cultivating deep interest in the element of tranquility, and letting it naturally grow and flourish, pervading the entire body. Can really open your eyes slowly and come out of meditation. Stretch your body if you need to. It's kind of funny because since the topic is mindfulness, as soon as the meditation was over, I was trying to reach out for the bell. And then I realized that at the very beginning, I unmindfully had not checked that the bell was close to the seat, so you didn't have any bell. It's another reminder why we're doing this practice, to always train ourselves. All right. And welcome to Denise, who has joined us in the meanwhile. Denise, there is here Neil, so it feels like being in a sort of, he's here for our winter retreat, so it seems like we have the East Village crowd, both virtually and physically, here at Empty Cloud. So great to see you. And all right. We can start by paying homage to our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So I was saying this morning, the title of this workshop, The Miracle of Mindfulness, is inspired by one of the titles of one of the hundreds, I believe, books of of Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a prolific writer. We're very grateful for that. And what comes to mind tonight was actually the first time I spent some time at Thich Nhat Hanh Monastery at Deer Park, actually, a few years ago. And I was walking with one of the monks there, and at a certain point, I start asking questions and saying a few things here and there. And she turns around and she says, "When you walk, you don't talk. And when you talk, you don't walk." And I remember going like, "It's a nice motto." And since we had been walking for a while, and we had to go back from where we started, but we had an in between these two phases. We stopped for a little bit because when she told me this, she stopped. She didn't walk because she was talking. It was very interesting, the experience of somewhat moving back or walking and seeing the urge, the sense of wanting to talk, wanting to share something, discuss something, perhaps even feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the silence of spending so much time with a person, and not there being any kind of verbal communication. It's interesting because I spent the last decade of my life before coming to Empty Cloud Monastery in New York City, where it's very difficult to monotask. And actually, productivity or multitasking is encouraged so much. And it's actually a necessity of life. So it was very difficult to be immersed in a practice where the opposite is encouraged, where you're either doing one thing at a time, or sometimes you're not doing anything at all. Actually, that is one of the most ideal states, yet it's the most challenging. And in this retreat, it's been very apparent actually for me of how easier it is to do something, even the thing that you hate the most to do, than it is to do nothing. And it's kind of paradoxical in a way, because um, especially if we're very busy and we have lots of things going on in our lives. If you ask any New Yorker, perhaps maybe when there's not a pandemic going on, but usually back in the day, the first thing was like, oh, I just wished I was the first one. I just wished I could take a break and just not do anything. And is that really true? Well, I'd say it's like half true, in the way that there is the aspiration where we're equating that not doing anything with peace, with calm. But then there is the actuality of it. And we see it also in meditation practice. Either we're naturally relaxed and we naturally sort of get into, the method of no method, putting effort in effortlessness, or it's one of the most difficult meditation practices. Most difficult. First time I practiced silent illumination, for example, it was my first thought, actually, which meant I was not quite practicing. I was like, wow, this is more difficult than um, mindfulness of breathing, which back in the day was extremely difficult for me to do, because I found the breath to be very subtle. So then, when there was nothing to do, like nothing to kind of force yourself to pay attention to, no object, it made me appreciate the subtleness of the breath. I was like, well, at least there's something there to do. And these are precious like realizations, because then we start understanding how in reality it's not that anything that we're actually doing in Buddhist practice is difficult per se. It's not that these types of trainings are difficult or complicated or anything you know outrageously impossible to achieve, but rather it's the strong tendencies of mind that we've cultivated for countless lifetimes that are challenging to overcome. And that fundamentally our craving is gigantic. Craving is so strong that our mind will start trying to look for anything to do, anything that is stimulating, enticing, rather than just being peaceful. And so we start understanding how even though if we're in the United States, we quote unquote live in the land of the free, and we have all these ideas of freedom. In reality, we are in a constant state of enslavement. And it's to our tendencies of mind, our defilements. It's our defilements that control us. And you think, oh, Empty Cloud Monastery, 2 months of like winter retreat. They must be all blissed out and all peaceful and all great. Oh, wonderful. And I mean, there's a bit of truth to that. There is sometimes where we're blissed out and peaceful, but sometimes we're just completely like, can I get a break from myself? It's actually quite intense to spend a lot of time just in the company of yourself. And probably a lot of you these days during a pandemic can relate to that. It's not a choice, so it's even more painful actually. For people who live by themselves, for example, prior to the pandemic, that was like an incredible, especially in New York City. Wow. Everybody aspires to live by themselves. Normally, they live with others out of necessity. But then when it's not a choice to, not see anyone for periods of time, can be a bit challenging. It's because you're spending a lot of time with yourself, which means some good things, some good positive qualities, and a bunch of defilements that push you in every single direction. So we have the whole spectrum of hindrances that are there offered on the plate, and it's very difficult to even sometimes just acknowledge that they're there. We just don't want to see them. We don't want to see, we don't want to perhaps acknowledge that there is so much hatred in the mind, or so much greed, or so much restlessness, or so much doubt. Right? There's like so many different strings and pulls that um yeah, take us, pull us in every single direction. But when we actually put the effort in really seeing what is in front of us, being present with what is in front of us, then we stop living in this world of ideas and how things, what we think, what we think things are, or perhaps what we think things should be like, or what we think we should be like, or others should be like. We sit down and we actually see, or we stand up, or we walk, whatever we're doing, but just one thing. And start removing our ideas from the table and becoming a little bit more in sync with reality. And that is one of the principles of Buddhist practice, of the Dhamma. It's the first and second noble truth. The first noble truth is that there is suffering and the cause of suffering. And in these situations, we can clearly see, clearly analyze it, clearly look for it, watch it, observe it for ourselves, in ourselves and others. And then rejoice because there is an end to it. It is so great. And there is a practice to it, and there is a training for it. And so sometimes when we think of spiritual practice, we can think of like, we can have so many ideas or preconceived, um, yeah, once again, thoughts about it. Perhaps actually, when we used to be in Rockaway, a lot of the kids there would stop us and were like, "Hey, Buddha!" Which is quite impressive, actually. That they knew we were Buddhist monks. So they're like, "Oh, hey, Buddha! Do you know how to levitate? Show me some tricks." And I was like, "Sorry, no, don't know how to levitate." And they were like, "Oh, whatever, boring." Like, oh, but we can we have free meditation classes, and they're like, oh, so I don't learn how to meditate, how to levitate there. Not interested, not coming. But there was once again these ideas of how of all these extraordinary superpowers. That's how we sometimes can think of spiritual practice. Um, Sometimes we have so much a craving for it that instead of even developing the necessary conditions for actually for developing superpowers, perhaps we pop up pills or different intoxicants in order to actually have an quote unquote extraordinary experience. But the core of Buddhist practice, even though actually a lot of superpowers, so to speak, can manifest, that is not the goal. That is not the purpose. But rather, what is really extraordinary is that we start making the what we perceive as ordinary extraordinary. So being present fully, like just right now, just actually being present, touching, for example, this table, feeling it, being fully present is extraordinary. It's incredible. And if we think, how many times, how many moments have we actually been fully aware in this lifetime? Forget about previous lifetimes. But even today, how many moments have we spent that way? And we'll see that there are very few actually. But whenever we are in those, in we're paying attention, we are there, fully there. Whenever we're successful at this, actually it's a pretty extraordinary state of being where suffering is not present or stops being a problem. I remember going to Bhavana Society to see Bante Ji. Probably said this story over and over again, but it never gets old. Have lots of Bante Ji stories because I adore Bante Gunaratana, and that's actually where I really started my practice. I had started before, but going to Bhavana Society really made a difference in my life. Anyway, so I remember going to visit Bante Ji, and Bante Ji is an incredibly compassionate human being, incredible teacher, and very, very generous with his time. So there was lots of different people that there are always lots of different people that go to Bhavana Society and ask to meet with him, and he generously, kindly offers his time and asks, answers questions and whatnot. Usually it's after the meal that he will spend several different hours with whoever is there asking questions. And I remember thinking, and actually going to him, and I was like, Bhante Ji, I know that, like, I mean, you're also like so busy. You write books, you give Dhamma talks, you study, you do so many different things. You're ordained monks, you train monks, like you run a monastery. There's like so many different things. How do you find the time? How do you get overwhelmed by this ocean of people? One thing is like one person that is struggling, two people that are struggling, three people that are struggling, four people that are struggling. But when you have oceans and oceans and oceans and oceans of people never ending every day, any regular person would have a really hard time. And so I asked him this question, and he simply said, and I'll paraphrase and probably butcher it, but hopefully you'll get my Italianglish. And fundamentally, what he said was, I just don't think about the future, about what I have to do afterwards. Whatever I'm doing in that moment, I'm doing that thing and I am present with it. And as long as you are fully present, fully engaged, then there is no suffering. There is no fatigue. So you know that from at this moment, you're just doing this. And then whatever else needs to be done afterwards, be done afterwards. You'll take care of it afterwards. And it was such a profound teaching because it also gave me an insight in my mind of how most often than not, when I am tired, it's not actually that I'm doing much, but I'm just thinking a lot. So actually, I am doing a lot of things, but they're not actually physical. They're not actually tangible. They're not practical. But it's a lot of noise of and this and that and planning and thinking and watching and getting anxious and connecting all of these things, which are draining to the mind and create the conditions for suffering. And we need to sleep more, and we need to do so many more things. So clear, actually. As soon as we started this retreat, at the very beginning of the 2-month retreat, I was very tired. And then all of a sudden, I didn't need to sleep that much, just a couple of hours every night. And I was like, oh, wow. How is it that that my mind needs less sleep, or my body? I thought at the very beginning, it was just like, oh, all of a sudden I need less sleep. And then I realized, oh, actually, well, we have some saint lay people here at the monastery that are helping us and supporting us in our retreat. So they're taking care of lots of things that normally my mind is taking care of. And if not necessarily physically, mentally, as a responsibility, as a sort of planning, as a sort of whatever it is. Oh, remember that at 3 p.m. this person is coming, or remember that we have to take the trash out on Monday and Thursday. Whatever kind of thing it is, there's almost like a sort of hard drive that is deposited, that fatigues the mind. And when that is not present, we're relaxed. But it's interesting because then I was reflecting, this is a very temporary, or very conditional rather than temporary. They're very particular conditions in place right now um, that allow for this result to happen. But what we're trying to do here with Buddhist practice is not to have conditional happiness or conditional peace, but unconditional happiness and peace. So these realizations are important because we understand causality. We understand actually dependent origination. When these conditions are in place, then this comes to be. But fundamentally, once again, it's never the external elements, but it's whatever we do with the mind. So whenever we start obsessing and categorizing and planning and doing this and doing that, we're not fully present. We're not engaged in the moment. We're engaged in the past and in the future, with brief moments in the present. And that creates suffering, of course. But the great news is that there is, once again, a way out of suffering. And there's a way to train our mind to remove the suffering. But first, we need to understand the workings of our mind. We can't go to the solution until we experience our mind for what it is. We see our mind. We accept the current state, the current conditions of the mind, and are okay with it, with the aspiration of removing it. So not judging. A lot of times we can come in with, it's interesting. We have, we always do sutta readings. We like the suttas a lot at this monastery. But over the course of the years, whenever we have readings with fellow practitioners, whether they're ordained or not, it doesn't matter. But sometimes some of the words of the Buddha, like the Buddha doesn't sugarcoat things at all. It can be actually quite, very direct, to the point that can sound sometimes even harsh, but it's not harsh at all. Just very direct. But when we read or when we see, when we hear her defilements, once again, it can go like, oh, I'm not that person. That can't be me. So we can create all sorts of justifications that it's okay to be a little bit lazy here and there. It's okay to goof off here and there. It's okay to do these things here and there, or break that precept, or do this other precept, or whatever. Maybe I understand that this can apply to these people, but it doesn't really apply to me in this particular circumstance, etc., etc., etc. And we can have these like long papers of justifications, which is where another opportunity where we see that we're not allowing ourselves to actually make progress in the path, because we're not acknowledging that this is present in our mind. And it's because we're taking it personally. But the thing is that actually the Dhamma is not something personal. Greed, hatred, and delusion is not something that is particular to Ayya Soma's mind. It's not particular to Neil's mind, just because he's here in front of me. He's an adorable practitioner. But yet he has great hatred and delusion. It's not particular to Gita, who I see. Hello. or Denise, or Ifisha, good to see you as well, or Mary, or Dean, or Chitapala, or any of you friends that are online. It's basically actually the most common human experience that the majority of living beings have. We have a resident cat here that is going through illness. It's been going actually through a lot of several different illnesses in the past 3 months. And now has a lot of physical pain and um, lots of different ailments and nausea. And it took me a while actually to figure out that he was experiencing nausea, because cats are also very stoic. But since I noticed it, then I actually started observing the parallels between actually Bhante Sudazo. Bhante Sudazo has a lot of digestive issues that it took me several years to understand that he even was having these experiences of like stabbing in the stomach, pretty intense. And you couldn't tell, kind of like Stan, very stoic. Oh, if I am sick, everybody knows around me, because I will go like, this is so much pain in the stomach. But the cat and but Stan the cat and Montesquieu the monk, imperceptible. But once I started actually understanding and noticing and observing, actually, it is pretty perceptible and so similar and very human. And you start seeing also the different reactions that a cat, that on the surface seems so different from a human, can have. So, looking sometimes for distraction from pain, for not being there, when he feels slightly more comfortable, with a little bit more energy, looking for entertainment in food. Then food upsets his stomach and he gets depressed. And then when he's depressed, after he's like depressed, he's like, oh, can there be something that can take me out of this misery? And he starts looking, chasing for things, but nothing is particularly there. And there's like this kind of like going round in circles, which is so sad, but it's just such a great teaching in terms of seeing that there's no difference on how we relate. We think that we're such sophisticated creatures as human beings, but in reality, we're actually the same as a cat. Yet we have the teachings. The main difference I was noticing, I'm spending a lot of time with Stan because he's my only roommate these days. So we meditate together. When I translate, I'm doing some Pali translation, and he translates with me, or like he's an aide. I have tea with Stan. I do walking meditation with Stan. Lots of things that we do together. Sleep together. And at a certain point, I was like, wow. I mean, aside from the fact that he doesn't know how to translate Pali and type on a computer, there's not a radical difference in the way that we are approaching the world, except that I have a way out and he doesn't. And that is what keeps him in this sort of struggle. And it reminded me actually of prior to the teachings of the Buddha, that sense of whenever I would get in a very bad place, that sense of hopelessness of where do we get out. And so this is also one of the incredible, recollections that we should also always do. That is actually, mindfulness. One of the way to sati, one of the ways to translate it is recollection. So always recollecting the Dhamma, bringing back the Dhamma, keeping the Dhamma with us in every single moment. Recollecting that there's a way out, recollecting the teachings, how to get out of suffering, how to train the mind, how to stop being enslaved by our our defilements, and how to generate wholesome qualities and remove the rubbish. Because that's fundamentally the purpose. So, why are we cultivating? A lot of times it can be, remember, one of my friends who's not Buddhist, but since mindfulness based stress reduction is a big hit in New York City, at his job, they made him do these series of meditation sessions, and he was not terribly impressed. And he was like, well, I mean, if I'm stressed out, actually, I find it a lot more relaxing to take a run in the park, or, take a walk, or perhaps actually sometimes even have a beer with my friends. And I was like, well, fair enough. I can see there is actually some truth to that. And that is because that is not exactly the purpose, as we were saying this morning. There's so many other ways to release stress. Go and get a massage, for example, than sitting, and especially if you're dealing with so much stuff, to actually even have to be there with all that stuff. Sometimes it can be the opposite of relaxing. Maybe like torment. Like, get me the hell out of here. How many people have stormed out of our peaceful retreats, from the Rockaway Summer House, our previous center in Rockaway? Not that many, but actually quite a lot. Luckily, not the majority of people. So, but quite a lot of people. I had someone who left actually in the middle of the night. I still remember their work period was to, I think, set up breakfast or something, and they weren't there. We were like, wait, what is going on? And then their roommate, I was like, oh yeah, she couldn't take it anymore, so she packed all her stuff and left at 4 a.m. And we're like, oh, okay. That's interesting. And lots of other actually people. Normally it was more during the daytime, but lots of people actually, without telling us anything, we have to put a guideline. Like, please just inform us. People are stirring away, and that's normally, once again, because it can be the opposite of relaxing, if that's our goal, if that's what we have in mind. That's what we think that spiritual practice is. And then we go there, and the mind is unpredictable because it's untrained. So then if you're in a place where you don't have all your usual stimuli, you don't have TV, and you don't have your phone, and you don't have Facebook, and you don't have Instagram, and you don't have this and that, there's like no distraction from yourself. So it can be actually the opposite of relaxing. So once again, then the purpose, we have to always recollect the higher goal, and that is the power of mindfulness. Recollect the goal of liberation, of unconditional happiness. And then recollect the Dhamma, recollect the teachings of how to generate wholesome qualities and how to remove wholesome qualities. And so to generate in every moment that skillfulness of knowing what is the appropriate response. What should I be doing right now? So if I see something that is incredibly delicious on the table, I have the power to recollect in that moment the unsatisfactory nature of this pastry or whatever I'm seeing. But even before I even see it, right? Recollecting, being present, practicing self restraint, understanding, seeing clearly, seeing, protecting our mind, guarding our mind. And so then we see how mindfulness is this powerful, incredible tool that leads us towards true freedom. That is not in the Constitution of the United States, which is very interesting because it's the pursuit of happiness. It's not the right for people to be free, to be happy, but it's the pursuit of happiness. That's the the right. So, like, instead of the pursuit of happiness in Buddhism, we actually have the goal is actual happiness. We have the right to be happy, hence. We have a way to become happy. But we can only become happy if we understand where our defilements are and how to protect our mind from our defilements. Instead of running towards our defilements and getting stabbed over and over again. And this is how we train in wisdom. Because we're becoming aware, we're understanding things as they are. In our mind, what needs to be done, what has been done. What needs to be cultivated, nourished, and what needs to be removed. Through body, speech, and mind. So across all the spectrum. And then we can make progress in this Dhamma and discipline. So this is all that comes to mind. It was a little bit of a stream of consciousness tonight. Tomorrow morning we'll have a sutta from the Buddha. So if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, feel free to type them in the live chat, and we'll have a conversation. Otherwise, you're welcome to save them for Friday evening. And Denise says, hello, Neil. And Mary says, I love to swim to relieve stress. You must be aware of your entire body as well as your breathing. I swim every morning for an hour and find I'm more at peace and behave in a more wholesome way. Yeah, that's great. I'm happy that you have a stress relief, Mary. But yeah, that's why it's important to understand that, mindfulness is not quite that. We're not cultivating necessarily, that's not the purpose of it, once again. But it's more kind of, being our own therapist. So having someone that is kind of there listening to our rubbish and our good things, and is aware, is completely there, present, listening, and capable of directing us towards happiness and wholesomeness. So this is more sort of the quality that we are nurturing with mindfulness, rather than just being, careful or being attentive, which are also great qualities, but that those are not necessarily the one thing that we're when we speak about mindfulness that we're cultivating. Oh, hello, Tina, and hello, Lloyd. Anumadana Sadhu for offering us all those meals during this retreat. You're very kind. And Ron says, I always enjoy Bhante G stories. Thank you. Yes, Bhante G is fantastic. And then Danilo says, hello, sorry I'm late. I didn't realize the stream was today. No worries, Danilo. I think these all go, actually, I know these all go up in on our channel. But yeah, we have kind of like a repetitive schedule. Every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 8 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. New York City time. So you can never go wrong. And Reynaldo, hello, says, is mindfulness without Buddhism dangerous? Um, I mean, anything without Buddhism is dangerous. Simply because we're so confused. So that's another quality of developing mindfulness, is that we stop being like the teachings of the Buddha. Is that we go about in the world out of so many different reasons. So sometimes, as I say all the time, like sometimes we do get things right, but a lot of the times we get things wrong. And when we get things wrong, then those will interfere with what we get right. And one thing that actually has really made an impact in my mind was I read the entire Anguttara Nikaya in the month of January, like cover to cover. And it was incredible to read so much Dhamma all at the same time. Like my mind at a certain point was about to explode. Like I was introducing so much Dhamma in my mind. But the reason why it was incredible was because even though a lot of these suttas I was familiar with, as in they were some of my favorites, etc. It was not about necessarily the newness of the material, but the newness of having it all concentrated and bombarding my mind all at once. Because it actually gave me so many insights on so many delusions that I had. So actually, now my new therapy for dispelling delusion is read the entire Pali Canon cover to cover until you just go completely mental, but as in like don't go to work, like just get take a whatever holidays people have, 2-week holiday. For those 2 weeks, just read the suttas. Doesn't even have to be like the entire Pali Canon. Just read the suttas and meditate. Sutta, meditate, sutta, meditate, sutta, meditate. And you start, there's a shift that happens where you start for moments like speaking or thinking the same way of the Buddha, of course, without being enlightened. So it's a really weird sort of situation, but you start understanding fully, like, or kind of like looking at your life or your decisions from the past and seeing, oh, that is completely flawed. That is completely wrong. And understanding the conditions that created for those decisions or thoughts to arise in your mind, and understanding how, because the sutta afterwards, he says, well, these are the conditions that you need to shift, right? So it's like being slapped by the Buddha over and over again, and every couple of pages. But it's so profound. So we're going to have a new monastery actually in March, because I was like, oh, this has to change, this other thing has to change, this other thing has to change. But yeah, but this is the reason why I'm bringing this up, is that we realize the danger. What I realized was the danger of delusion, the danger of going out of our own intuition, the danger going out of our own ideas. I think it was Kowsar Friends this morning who was asking for an alternative way instead of doing puja, which is like innocent and a sweet actually question to begin with. Doesn't seem that major. And I was sharing, I had similar thoughts, because we're all the same. There was nothing unique to Kowsar Friend and myself, even though we haven't ever met in real life, and we were raised in two entirely different countries in Europe with different languages. Um, but it's we, whenever we approach the Dhamma or we approach the teachings, because we're unenlightened, we have a distorted view. So we tend to think that we know better. We tend to think that certain things are antiquated, perhaps, or they are foreign, or they are not useful for us, or whatever it is. No matter like how advanced, sorry, not how advanced, no matter how many years we've been practicing, no matter where we are from the world. Um, and that's why it's very important to cultivate actually humbleness, humility, and being open to question ourselves and go, wow, I'm actually an unenlightened being. Let me see what the enlightened beings um, are doing. And when, we think, for example, something like puja, the way it has been done, for 2,500 years, Asian countries have produced enlightened beings, but um, Western countries really haven't. So there might be something in that puja. That's a different way of approaching things. So it's the same whenever we encounter anything. Also, the practice of mindfulness, in and of itself, it's just a tool. So it's not that it can be dangerous per se, but without, the whole other um, elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. But there is a slippery slope, which is what we see in this country that is taught, for example, for killing in the military. That is definitely wrong mindfulness. If you have a definition for wrong mindfulness, that is definitely it. It's unwholesome for the being who is practicing wrong mindfulness, and for others. Tomorrow morning, actually, I think, we will be talking about that in one of the suttas. Okay, so let's see. Denise says, mindfulness while at work in the office is a goal of mine, but I can never make it past 10 a.m. Hey, rejoice that you've been mindful up to 10 a.m. So once again, also it's very important. Maybe tonight I was a bit doom and gloom, like, oh, look at all your like the work that needs to be done. And but actually there's also a big part. We need to understand when it's the time to rejoice in our good qualities and when it's the time to look at what needs to be done, look at the sort of the drawbacks of our situation. So yeah, if you're mindful from the moment you wake up till 10 a.m., that's more than 99% of the population. So yeah, just look at yourself in the mirror and go like, incredible, Denise, you're wonderful. And Danilo says, I've been told by some of my Dharma friends that I often have lapses in mindfulness, which result in unhealthy behavior. What should I do to fix this? Practice. No excellence can be acquired without constant practice. That is one of my favorite mottos, sayings. So yeah, of course, I'm pretty sure that your friends do have lapses in mindfulness that result in unhealthy behavior. So that is just part of training yourself, and we do it first of all in sitting meditation. So in formal practice, sitting, walking, standing, and possibly when we're a little bit more advanced, also lying down. So obviously the 4 satipatthanas. So mindfulness of the body, cultivating mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of dhammas. So all of that, there are infinite practices that we can do. And by the way, the satipatthanas are not necessarily even just formal meditation, but actually something that has to be practiced 24/7. And that also can be practiced in the office up until 10 a.m. and then 10:15, 10:30, 11, 12, until it becomes the whole day. Because we can constantly come back to the body. The body's always here. We're always carrying the body around. So it's always there as a useful tool of practice. Just being aware of it is practicing, is training ourselves. All our emotions, anger, understanding an angry mind, understanding a greedy mind, understanding a happy mind, whatever it's going on. Understanding if something is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It's all the different feelings, the quality of the feelings that we're having based on our experiences. And then all the different dhammas, the hindrances in the mind and whatnot. So actually our entire human experience allows us 24/7 to cultivate mindfulness. And then you'll see, you have to acknowledge, once again, do the work of noticing what is your unhealthy behavior. If you're not aware of it, then if you have spiritual friends who are kind enough to point that out, then ask them more for details. And then become acquainted with your defilement. And then start uprooting it. So start actually by looking at what are the conditions that create this defilement to arise, and start uprooting the conditions. Start eliminating them. And that's, also a judgment call that you need to do for yourself in terms of understanding. Sometimes the defilement is so strong, especially if you're not aware of it. It might be that it's so potent that actually you need to, that's the time where you need to practice abstinence from the conditions that generate the three fires to arise, whether it's a person or whether it's specific environment or whatever it is. You have to start learning what your conditions are, and from there make the appropriate response. And Daniel says, so in this case, everyone is unique in practice, and one practice may help one while not helping someone else as much. It depends on what you mean by practice. So the Buddha taught so many different things. It's kind of like, if you want to learn how to do oil painting, it's not that like the color brown works for me but doesn't work for you. And the color blue works for me and doesn't work for that. There's like a bunch of different colors in the palette, and we need to learn as we are painting. If we want to make a Van Gogh painting, I think in English you say it in a different way. I said it in Italian. Maybe I should pick a different painter. In Italian we say Van Gogh. Anyway, point being, you need to understand, if you want to make grass, then the appropriate color that you're going to use is not, pink, right? If you start using pink, then you'll have a different result. Maybe you're going to have a psychedelic grass, who knows? That was your intention. But anyway, at the very beginning, you'll see with any kind of discipline, it's a trial and error. You start messing things around, and you're kind of like, oh, wait, if I mix these two colors, then I get a different color, a different nuance. So it's the same with the different practices that the Buddha has shared with us. So the very beginning, we're a bit messy. We might do one meditation practice when we're supposed to be, developing something else. um Perhaps our mind is full of hatred, and then we start developing the unattractiveness of of bodies, and then we become even more averse when we should be developing a mind of loving kindness to eliminate the aversion. So it's a trial and error. um and then as we become more skilled, then we understand what is the appropriate antidote. And it's the same with in not quote unquote formal meditation. So in meditation in everyday life. So in Dhamma practice in everyday life, then we'll understand what is the appropriate response. What am I supposed to say now if I am speaking to someone? Perhaps sometimes actually I shouldn't be saying anything. And before practice, that wouldn't have been an option, right? So new options arise, and then we start understanding what is the most appropriate response. So I hope that answered your question. Adine, yeah, Leonardo da Vinci would have been an easier thing. Thanks for the tip. I don't know why I picked Van Gogh out of all. Scott says, hello, Scott, first of all. Scott says, I had an experience recently where the Dhamma helped me an extremely uncomfortable mind state arose. I noticed the mind not wanting to investigate it. Then I realized this is suffering. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's great. That's progress. That's wonderful. Yeah, we're so averse to suffering. So then it's so counterintuitive, the Dhamma, because intuitively we just create more suffering. We're like, well, this looks horrible, so let me turn my head away and I won't see it. And actually what we're doing it is nourishing it, but it doesn't appear in that way. It's kind of like giving. Intuitively giving seems like a loss, but the Dhamma is counterintuitive. Instead, we're acquiring so many wholesome things by letting go of a bunch of junk. So that's why, we need to dispel delusion. There is some stuff that just seems so real, so true, that it's so difficult to even take it into consideration, take it as a working hypothesis. So difficult. And Scott says, the mind state passed as a result of awareness. Yeah. Once again, if we see something, if we look at it, instead of turning around and watering it, then it will start drying up because we're not watering it. We see it, we look at it, we don't fertilize it, we don't add water, and then the conditions aren't there anymore for the seed to sprout and flourish and become a potent, plant and weed that kills then every other wholesome thing that we have around. So yeah, so absolutely seeing, looking, acknowledging, then removes the confusion that we normally have when we go around in the world. So yeah, so wonderful. I rejoice in the fact that you're making progress in the path. All right, so I think that's all for this evening. We're 4 minutes late, very Italian time. Great. All right, so I'll see you again tomorrow at 8 a.m. and again tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. New York City time, and again on Friday morning. And then bring all your questions on Friday evening for monk chat. So hopefully related on this subject, which pretty much is our day-to-day life. So there's lots of questions. All right, so we can end the evening with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you be well and happy, and may all good things come to you.